Good evening, everyone. Going to just wait a couple of minutes to let everybody get into the Zoom, and we'll get started here very shortly. So thank you for joining, and we'll be beginning soon.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming. Good evening. Happy New Year.
People are still flowing in. We'll give it about one more minute, and then we'll start.
You tell where people are coming from.
I can't tell where they're coming from.
This is
Anyone who's
4 o'clock West Coast.
yeah.
Forgot about that, actually, the time change. So 7 for us, 4 o'clock for West Coast. Some people are still at work. Anybody watching us at work and not telling anybody?
Yeah. You could do the late.
Yeah. Go to midnight. That'd be fun.
It is now 7:02. I think we've got a quorum. I'm sure some people will continue to filter in as we get started, but uh, let's begin. Again, welcome everyone to our webinar on updates on the VIGOR project. My name is Todd Pearson. I am a faculty member and scientific director in the dermatology department here at UMass Chan Medical School, a part of the VIGOR research team. Very pleased to be joined by Manuel Garber and John Harris, the co-leaders of the VIGOR project. And we're here to give you some exciting updates about what's been going on for about the last 5 or so months since we had our last webinar. Just a couple of housekeeping items as we get started. Everyone is on mute throughout the webinar, so if you have any questions, you can enter them into the chat feature or the Q&A feature in Zoom. We do plan on having time to answer questions at the end, so please enter them in there. We'll be checking them as we go. And we are recording this webinar. We'll send it out to everyone who attends tonight, and also to all of the other study participants. So if someone in your family that's a part of the study was not able to join and they want to see this, they will be able to do so. So we'll be sending out that recording after we're done. And with that, let's jump in. So just to give you a quick overview of what we're hoping to cover tonight, we want to give you a little good news up at the front about our participant raffle that we had just before the holidays. And then we're going to go into a pretty detailed update on our recruiting efforts for the study and some of the preliminary things we've in fact learned about all of you participants in the VIGOR study. And then move on to a look at what's coming in 2025 with the study, and then finish up again with some Q&A. So I get the good news of talking about the raffle winners. On December 17th, we held a raffle and we gave away 31 prizes ranging from $50 all the way up to $500. If you add that all up, I think it's just about $5,000 that we gave away to participants in the study. We've listed out their first names here. And just as a reminder, we are going to do a raffle exactly like this every 6 months. So you will have chances to win if you didn't get your name drawn this time. Don't worry. So just also as a reminder, the way that you earn tickets to get your name drawn is by performing tasks inside the smartphone app for the VIGOR project. When you complete surveys or do other tasks in the app, you earn points towards tickets, and the more that you do, the more tickets that you can earn. And of course, that improves your odds for having your name drawn during the raffle. If you were a winner in December, you are still eligible the next time around. So please keep answering those surveys and staying engaged with the study. And again, really excited to give this small token of our appreciation to these folks for all of the work they're doing to help us with the study. Again, we really could not do this work without you. So with that, we'll move on to talk about some of the recruitment, and I'll turn it over to John and Manuel.
Who is you? So we currently have almost 600 participants, and most of the large states are represented. With Massachusetts, a lot of local people have joined. There are people who attend the clinic of John.
Yeah, from my clinic. I have a lot of people from Massachusetts actually, but from other states and other countries as well. We had somebody from Guatemala today who wanted to join the study, but her entire family's in Guatemala. So people keep asking whether we can go outside the country. That's maybe in the future, but
yeah,
certainly
hopefully Canada at some point.
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, so it's yeah, we are represented. We would love if we can cover this map with colors, but yes, it's the participation is roughly right proportional to the size of the states, except for a few exceptions. But overall, we have participants from all over the country. And most of you have recruited a lot of family members. So this is a family student. We're thankful for you to have, again, included people who do not have vitiligo to help us understand how this begins. So what you're seeing here is we have how many participants for each family for the given size of the family, right? So we have one family, two families of 12 people. And most of you have enrolled already. Only 2 people from those families are finished, are missing. We have 3 families of 10, and there the recruitment has been lagging. So 8 people. We hope that you can convince your family members to join our study. That we are waiting on you to fill up the rest of the cohort. So we have not invited many people since we initially invited you guys, waiting for the folks on the red to join the study. So we're kind of making time for this to be all green and everybody to be in the study.
So this is a little insight into how a mathematician sends data to everybody, right? So many of you might be looking at this and saying, oh, it's false and true and all these things. But this is how a mathematician puts all the data together. All the green bars are the people who have enrolled in the study and are answering surveys, and they're a part of us. All the red bars are people and families who engaged initially but haven't signed the consent and fully enrolled. And so these might be your family members that haven't joined yet. And we really need to get those family members into the green, those red into the green. So if you have any pull with your family members, you can convert those red to green. Imagine how much bigger our study would be.
Actually, we know because we are funded to support 1,000 of you, and we have invited 980. So if you invite everybody here that is in red, joins the study, we're pretty much at the size of the study.
We have what we need.
We have what we need. So that's what we are waiting. So we are hoping that you guys, that your family members enroll, and then that will be you as the cohort going forward.
Yep. The average family size is 3.19 or close to 3.2, and that means on average, everybody has invited 2 people from their family who don't have vitiligo. Again, some people have invited 11 people from their family. We have some big families, but on average, it's over 3, which was our goal. I think we wanted to get over 3.
Yep.
The bigger that number gets, the better. Those are more people from the family, and most of those don't have vitiligo. And don't forget that it's not that we're trying to get at families who all have vitiligo. We're trying to get one person with vitiligo and their family who doesn't.
And that's what will allow us to figure out why people get vitiligo exactly.
Diversity or the lack thereof.
Yeah, so we've tried to to advertise our study to as broad as possible, but the most of you, the VIGOR cohort, is from European ancestry with some Latinos that have joined, and
Because you converted all of our stuff into Spanish.
yeah, yeah, I'm from Venezuela, and a lot of my countrymen are in Florida. That's what you saw, a big Florida, big Florida participation, as many Floridians have heard my call to participate in the VIGOR study. And there is also a sizable Indian and Asian community that has been part of the study.
South Asian is common, but
so we're hoping to even this up. Yes, we're hoping to even this up. And on the right, you can see what the age of you, the cohort, is. So in red are people who reported having vitiligo. You can see that there are a young set of people, the children that are part of the study, as well as the adults. And overall, you have invited people who are in average much younger. So that's what we had expected that the cohort will look like. And yeah, of course, we welcome everyone.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is pretty much what we expected.
So polyautoimmunity is a big word, but this is something that we looked at. There's a lot of data that if you have vitiligo, then you and your family members are more likely to have some other diseases caused by the immune system as well. And what this is showing is a number of different autoimmune diseases. Alopecia areata is an autoimmune disease causing hair loss. Graves' disease and Hashimoto's are thyroid diseases. Psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis. And you can see that in every case, people with vitiligo are reporting having these other things more than their healthy family members. So that supports kind of what we've known before. It shows that what we're seeing in you, our cohort in this study, is repeating what's been reported in other studies. This is great. This is a lot of people, and this is reported directly by you rather than us trying to dig this information out of charts, which is usually how the studies are done. So this is done a slightly different, and it's confirming what has been reported before. So that's really very helpful. Hair dye. So this is a little, again, it's our mathematician, Manuel, reporting the data, but what this is essentially telling you, if you look at those who responded, yes, I've used hair dye, versus those who responded, no, I don't use hair dye, you see more people with vitiligo responding yes than no, twice as many, actually. And their family members, of course, some of them use hair dye as well, but there's almost the same number answering yes and no. So if you don't have vitiligo, your likelihood that you're using hair dye is about the same. And if you do have vitiligo, the likelihood you're using hair dye is double. Now, we were just talking before we started here that could mean that using hair dye causes your vitiligo, or it could mean that if you have vitiligo, you're more likely to use hair dye. Like, that's just an association. I published a paper with a collaborator a few years ago reporting that actually there is a strong association and using hair dye is causative for vitiligo. We have some data on that as well. But this is very interesting just in our reporting.
So far, strongly supporting that.
Yeah, in the first year and a half, we have data supporting that piece. And this would be the second study. We've only ever been able to do one study reporting that. Here's the second one.
And our goal is to dig more of this kind of strong association, things that are strongly associated with having vitiligo, and that may even be strongly associated with people who develop vitiligo through the study.
Yeah, that's a great point. So this is the first confirmation of our previous study, but the goal of VIGOR is to find new associations like this where we didn't know it. Yeah. And this is a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah, this will help everybody that is at risk of developing vitiligo.
It's important. I had two patients today in clinic who we strongly think that hair dyes cause their vitiligo. And so we had long conversations about that. And one of them had no idea, didn't know that there had been an association reported, and that was important. The other one did, and before she came in. So all this is really important, for clinical care, but then, for our research as well.
Yeah. And, it's actually a nice segue from what we're about to go into, but I'll just add that the way that we learned all of this, that we collected this data that we're presenting here, is through the surveys that we use to help, give you raffle tickets to earn money. So your thoughtful completion of the surveys is what's helping us to find these things. So it's really cool to be getting that information, so soon into the study. And so the transition is into a look at what's to come for all of the participants in the VIGOR study this coming year. And so um, we'll sort of switch into that. So what's ahead, guys?
Yeah. So you already received one kit from us, and you sent that back at a very high rate. Almost everybody sent their kits back, and we were able to use your samples, which was amazing. It's so important. In that first kit was a spit tube that you spit into, and I heard today in the lab meeting we got a ton of people spit and sit in the lab. People were really good. There's a lot of spit in there. That we're only doing once. It's a one-time only thing because
I'm sorry. And it's amazing because almost everybody who sent a sample, it was enough. It was sufficient. It worked. So we already sent most samples to Genotype at the facility, and they have reported results back to us, and 95% of the samples were great.
Really? Yeah.
Only those that did not work, we are reaching out to the individuals for which the sample did not work, but this has been an incredible success.
Yeah, we'll ask you to spit again, and so we can try to do it next time. But genotyping is a fancy way of saying that we're looking at the genes, and we're able to look at family members and how they're related, and we're seeing that children, have half the genes that the parent had. This is all the way it's supposed to work. Siblings have 25%. So the data is good, and it makes sense. And if your sample didn't work, we're going to send you another tube to try again. I'm very empathetic with this because I did Ancestry.com, and I actually had to send 5 samples before it actually worked. I don't know. I Googled it and I read that some people just don't have a lot of DNA.
He told me that, so I was very worried that we would have to send tubes back, but that's not been the case.
Yeah.
He's definitely an exception.
I'm an outlier in what the 12 people that we need to resend to, or you're like me for some reason. Anyway, but we'll send those back out. But most of you will not get a second spit tube because we don't need any more. You sent the blood through the Tasso, and actually we had a super high rate of success with that, getting plenty of sample back. So most of you have blood samples for, which is critical for so many things that we want to do.
So we are also surprised because the company that builds these devices usually says that about 80, I don't remember the exact number, but say 80% of the samples are viable or have enough blood in them. You guys have sent us samples, about 95% of the samples have enough volume, and they can be what the lab calls spinned into what we need to do analysis. So it's been tremendous.
You outperformed the average.
And those of you who have chosen not to send a Tasso device and use it, we will honor this. So we have now a flag, and we should not send you a Tasso device next time. If we do by mistake, just forgive us. We didn't have our ducks in a row, but a few of you, I think 10 people have indicated that they rather do not use the device, so we will try to honor this by not sending the device.
If you change your mind,
let us know.
Change your mind, let us know. We'd love to send you a device.
We will send the device.
The blood is a big part of what we're collecting and what we're learning. And so we thank you, all of you who've done it. We've actually heard from many of you that it was really no big deal, and glad that you did it. And so we're glad and thankful for that.
Yeah, please feel free to share if you have any negative experience with the device. That would also be helpful.
Yeah. So in the new kit, we'll be sending out the Tasso device again. And we'll be adding skin tapes this time. You can see a picture of Jane actually in our video demonstrating this. And this is kind of like a sticky Scotch tape that you wrap gifts with. They may have done that over the holidays. Press it on the skin and pull it off. And it actually has some skin cells attached to it. It doesn't hurt. It's very easy to do. You'll send that back to us, and we'll be looking on those tapes for your skin cells that will tell us, why you have vitiligo, or if you might develop vitiligo, or if you might develop a flare of vitiligo. Other things that we are potentially, we're still working hard on are micro patches. They're a little bit different than tape. They'll absorb some fluid from your skin just by pushing them on the skin. It's really cool. We've asked, many of you answered a survey that you'd be willing to give us hair samples. So this is a way that it's interesting. We learned that you can measure your stress level from your hair. So if we take just some pieces of hair, dead hair, you clip it off with some scissors, and it's about 20, 25 strands of hair. You won't even miss it. we can measure how much cortisol is in that hair, which is secreted by your body and into your blood when you're under stress. So it turns out that a centimeter of hair closest to your scalp is how stressed you were last month. And then the next centimeter, 2 centimeters away from the scalp, is how stressed you were 2 months ago. And then 3 is 3 months ago. And so we want to actually use this as a method to correlate. Those of you who have vitiligo and are getting flares, a lot of times people say, oh, I'm really stressed and I'm noticing a flare. We'd be able to measure that in your hair. So we're just thinking through the logistics. We don't want to make things too complicated for you, but it's relatively easy to do. And we want to, so we're working on optimizing it and making sure it works well in the lab.
Yeah.
And of course, if you look like me or Manuel, you may not be able to give a hair sample, and that's completely okay.
Throw it out.
One thing I wanted to mention is we're particularly excited with the skin samples because as John said, the hair will measure one specific thing, which is stress, which we believe is highly correlated, or people believe are highly correlated. Nobody has shown this. It's mostly logical conclusion, and people that develop vitiligo has associated their flare or their initiation with stress, but nobody really knows if that's really the case. With the skin patch, we have a set of what we call markers that we could measure from these samples. And in general, you will develop vitiligo probably years after the initial cause happened, but we believe the markers will arise much earlier. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're very interested or excited from obtaining those skin samples, as we believe those will be really, really the key that will change as soon as you may have experienced a negative event that might eventually possibly lead to the developing of vitiligo.
Right.
And I guess the last thing I'll just say before we move on from this is that we intend to send kits every 6 months. So while you only received 1 kit in 2024, in 2025, you can expect to get 2 kits shipped to you. One probably in the first month or 2, depending on when you joined the study here in early 2025, and then one later in the year. So
we actually had no idea how this kit shipping would work. We've never done this before. Really, this is the first time a study has done something like this. It's really wild, not just for vitiligo, but for any skin disease or any disease. And it's working incredibly well. We're sending the kits to you. You're getting them. You're shipping them back to us. We're getting them. We're getting your samples out, and they're good samples. And we're putting them in our freezer, and we're logging them, and it's all working. And this was something that has really kind of blown us away. I mean, how many times have you ordered something from Amazon and not received it? Our nightmare is that this would be rampant in this study, and we wouldn't get anything back. But part of it is you guys are really committed, and you're making sure to get the kits in the mail, and you're being diligent about doing them. And we're so thankful. I think the fact that your tasso is working better than average, we're getting a much better response than average, is really due to your commitment, and it's what's going to make this study successful. So thank you.
And so moving on, now we've got a piece of really exciting news
news.
Yes, so you can see it look silly because I'm wearing 2 watches, because I think we mentioned last time we did the webinar, we acquired funding to send everybody, the 1,000 participants. We already purchased the 1,000 wearable devices. There will be this Fitbit Sense that we just acquired. So we're testing, and we're trying to be able to, we're testing the analysis that we can do from the data that we collect. So the clinical team, myself, and a few others are wearing devices, and the informatics team is looking at our data to see how well this will help. But as John said, the hair may allow us to measure your stress, but if you share with us your vitals through the wearable, we might be able to measure not only stress, but any changes that you might eventually associate with vitiligo, which is changes in sleep patterns, changes in exercise patterns. If you share with us your location, we could even see that if travel might have been the cause or associated with changing the markers that we're measuring in your skin devices. So we are very excited, and the funding agency was also very excited with the idea that with a wearable, we could quantitatively measure all these things standardized for all the cohorts.
Yeah.
So
Do you want to say what we're measuring? Looks like heart rate, sleep
yeah,
cycles.
so we're going to, so and something called HRV, which is heart rate variability, which is highly correlated with levels of stress or even physical activity. We're going to measure, this is a very specific device that measures skin temperature. And nobody has done that, but our hope, and that's what we're testing with our devices, is that we can maybe measure even small bouts of infection that you might not even report by looking at changes in your temperature and your sleep patterns, which are usually associated with you being under the weather. So we will eventually reach out to you to see if you will work with us to allow us to, if we detect something like this, if you would allow us to call you just to verify whether that event occurred. Right now, we don't plan on doing this. That's why all the team is wearing the devices, because we are doing exactly this, right? So every one of us, if we are sick, we report sickness.
So you get a call from us and say, "Are you feeling okay?"
So to avoid that, the team is doing this. We all are reporting, we did exercise last night, we slept bad, we're stressed, and we are trying to correlate that with the measurables that we obtained. So that's what Todd, myself, and 10 others in the team are wearing devices. And yes, that's
so this is really cool. We didn't expect to be able to do this, but this is a $200 Fitbit watch, and we're going to send them. Everybody who's participating in the study will get one. When can people expect them, do you think?
Yes, so I am hoping that by the end of March. That's my guess. So we want to send you, we need to get approved a consent form for those of you who want to share. So you will receive a watch even if you are not willing to share the data with us.
Is that true?
Yes.
I was going to say,
we're
let us know if you're not going to wear it.
Yes,
we don't want to. These are expensive watches.
Yes, we are going to send a device to everyone. We also have devices that are specific for kids in case the kids want. So for anybody who is under 12, we send a device that is designed for a kid. For everybody who's over 12, we'll send this device. We hope you do share the data with us, but you are free to say no. We're not going to press it. We hope as many as possible of you will share the data with us. So by the end of March, so the reason I said that is we are building what we call a consent form that explains to you in exactly what measurements we are going to take, why, how often, etc. And you will read this and agree to share the data with us. Once you do, then we will start collecting the data. If you do not consent, then we won't collect anything.
Right. And again, we're sending them to everybody that joins the study. And so if you have a family member that has been maybe kind of on the fence about joining the study, you can let them know that as a part of joining, they'll get a Fitbit device from us for joining. So maybe that'll be just a little incentive that they need to join the study as well. So yeah,
and they'll be able to use this themselves as a Fitbit device, right? So we'll collect it. I mean, our goal is to collect the data so that we can correlate it to everything we're studying. But they'll also be able to download the app. Just use it themselves.
It's yours for your own use. But if you agree to share the data with us, we'll be collecting this data to try to associate any of these changes with changes in the markers that we will measure in your web devices or from the surveys that you have, right? So that will be really, really amazing.
Yeah, again, first time I think anybody's doing this. So this is super exciting. The National Institutes of Health gave us this funding to do this. It's extra funding to our study to do it because they're really excited about the opportunity. If this works well, we can use this for lots of different diseases and lots of different purposes. We're starting with vitiligo and with you just because we had the idea and we were able to get the funding to do it.
Yeah, very exciting. So now I'd like to move on to the Q&A. We've had some questions come in throughout the presentation, so I'll start there. If anyone else has a question that they want to ask, go ahead and enter it into the Q&A and we will try to get to them. But let me jump right in. So the first question is maybe most appropriate for you, John, which is, are you able to tell me whether vitiligo can affect vision and hearing?
There are lots of reports so first of all, vitiligo is results in white spots on the skin because the pigment cells, the melanocytes, are killed by the immune system. And once the melanocytes are dead, you don't have pigment in that area anymore. And what's fascinating is of course, there are melanocytes in our skin. There's melanocytes in our hair follicles that turn our hair dark. But there are also melanocytes in other parts of our body it's really interesting. They're in our inner ear. They're in the eye. They cause the color of the iris, and they're also in the retina, and they help absorb light for us to be able to see. They're in the lining of our brain. They're in our heart. And we don't know exactly what they're doing in all those locations. We do know people who have albinism and can't make pigment have issues with vision and hearing. And so that's part of the purpose of pigment, interestingly. And we don't know a lot of detail about that. But it's reasonable to expect then that if you have vitiligo and your immune system kills melanocytes in your skin, it's also possible that those melanocytes could be killed in the ear and in the eye as well. And if that happens, you would expect maybe that they might not function as well. So there are a number of studies that report vision changes in people with vitiligo compared to controls who don't have it, as well as hearing. And the hearing changes it's not that people with vitiligo are becoming deaf. And actually, most people with vitiligo that have hearing changes don't know it. They have to go through a formal testing. And when they go through the formal testing, they're realizing that they're losing the lower frequency of hearing. And that's not something that you just know. It's just, you have to do a test, and then it's just the lower frequencies. So that's something interesting. We're actually doing a study now in my clinic to test this a bit to see if we can repeat that. Vision changes are a little bit different because lots of people have vision issues. I wear contacts or glasses. And so that's common anyway. We do think it's more common if you have vitiligo. And that's something we should be thinking about here, if there's a way to incorporate that into the VIGOR study. And the power of the VIGOR study is not just studying people with vitiligo, but their close relatives who don't, right? That's such an important cohort that will teach us about this. So we may learn more in this way.
Yeah, great. Next question was about hair cortisol testing. Are we going to receive feedback on our cortisol levels? That would be incredibly interesting.
I can tell you, so we started by doing this in the lab. Everybody in the lab gave a hair sample, and they were all competing to see who was the most stressed. And I can tell you that the one person in the lab who was the most stressed was somebody who was preparing for a triathlon. And so that maybe made a little bit of sense, but everybody thinks they got a lot of stress, and we were able to kind of compare that and compete with each other. Good question, whether we'll report back to you, like who you're most, how stressed you are. I guess it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, because if we collect only one sample, that doesn't tell us, if you're stressed or not. We have to collect a second sample and compare it to the first one and say, well, you were more stressed, this time than you were the last time. I don't think we're going to have competitions within families to see who, and report who's the most stressed person. But we're not sure yet. We have to think through that.
Yeah, we have to think through that. We have to work through our review board to make sure that we can share data. There are some restrictions on what data can be shared. But this is interesting. I didn't think about it, and we'll explore.
I mean, I would want to know. If I get a hair sample, I would want to know the result of that. I think we would love to share that data if we can do it safely and with permission from the IRB. They don't want to, just prevent you from knowing your data. It's just that, is there something we could share actually that would have a negative result impact on your life?
This seems easy. That's the advantage of the wearable, because we are automatically sharing the data with you. We see the same data. Yeah. So that's the advantage of the wearable. That's just one nice thing about it.
Yeah. Great. So the next question is, you are using the word flare. I have a great deal of stress. Your survey asks about new spots. I do not have new spots, but 2 spots continue to grow. Is that a flare? And do you want a picture of those spots each time you ask, or would you like a current pic and then one at the end to see how they changed?
Yes, please. So I would say a flare is either new spots or growing size of old spots. I mean, technically a flare means that those spots stopped growing and then started again. It could be that you had a spot that never stopped growing, right? That's not necessarily a flare. That's just ongoing spreading disease. But actually, yeah, if you feel like you've got a change in your spots, we want to know that, whether it's a new one or it's getting larger. If the more data that we have, the more pictures that we have, the better.
Great. Here's a question that makes us realize, maybe we take certain things about our study for granted, but what is the app and how do we use it?
Oh, okay. So the app is what you use to even sign up to the study. So we send you a link to where to and how to download the app in the study. You have it there?
I'm gonna look it up. Yeah, I've got
Yes.
got it up.
So if you do not have this information, you should reach out to us. So in the website, there is an email and we will resend you the invite. So that's how, but for you to get access to the app, you will have to be invited by us. That's how you get a link to download the app. So only people who have been invited to participate in the study because they have provided a photo that shows they have vitiligo and they have recruited at least one other family member are invited to the study. So if you have and if you have been invited and you do not have the app, let us know. And if you have done this and we have not invited, please also follow up with us.
Yeah, I have a new vitiligo spot. Boom, click on that. Then it's going to ask you questions about it. You can upload a picture about it. Have you noticed new white spots that you think could be vitiligo? Then you press yes, and that the app is really key. And we are very, very happy to get on a Zoom call with you and walk you through how to use it and everything.
And there is a web version of the app that also could be used, but I don't know, and Todd might know better than me, whether you can enroll by consenting, by reading all the information that we provide you in the web version of the app. Todd might know that better than me.
Yes, everything that you can do on the phone app, you can do on the website. And so the way to start is to use this email that's up on your screen right now. Contact us using the vigor@umassmed.edu, and we can get you set up to get into the app and consent into the study. So thank you for that question. Next question, what specifically does the Fitbit measure, more so for those without vitiligo? Is this more or less measuring stress levels that can potentially trigger vitiligo?
Exactly. But not only stress levels, but maybe change in even physical activity, changes in your sleep patterns that might not directly cause stress, but are related to a change in your overall health. And those are the ones we hope that we can identify that then correlate with the changes in your markers. So that's the whole point of the Fitbit.
There is a hypothesis that getting a viral infection can trigger vitiligo. And we get viral infections all the time. And so it's hard to know, everybody always remembers, I got vitiligo. And then you ask them, they're like, oh yeah, I was sick within the last 3 months. And this would actually help us so with that slight change in temperature, that would imply a viral infection, and we'll know exactly when that happened, even if you noticed it or didn't notice it. And then as we accumulate all that data, if somebody gets more vitiligo, new onset vitiligo, we can look back and see if that temperature changed at some point.
And that's why we got this specific device. This specific device does measure skin temperature.
Costs more.
Yes, it does cost more. So that's why that's the reason we got this device. So we can do this, and that's what we are testing right now.
And actually, there was a paper that was published recently that claimed that sleep disturbance actually was correlated with vitiligo as well. And this measures sleep. So we're going to be able to confirm that in your population. You specifically asked, if you don't have vitiligo. So it's true that, we're going to look at stress levels. We're going to look at activity, your sleep cycles and everything. And if it's not so much looking that you're different from somebody else. It's when something changes for you. When you have a cycle, when you have a flow, and then that changes or deviates, that's an indication that something might have changed.
And you might not develop vitiligo during the study, but the markers that we measure in your skin might be more similar to somebody who has vitiligo, and those events that lead to that change is what we think are critical to identify. So we can, as John says, revert them or avoid or avoid them and be aware of what might be, putting you in the brink of developing vitiligo. That's the whole point of this study.
Great. So the next question is actually related to something we were just talking about, and that is, could COVID vaccines cause or increase vitiligo?
That just came up today in clinic, comes up almost every clinic day as well. People ask. Of course, it's hard to know for sure. I can tell you, I saw lots and lots and lots of people with new onset vitiligo that were convinced it was a COVID vaccine that did it, because they got vitiligo and they thought back and they were like, oh, I got a COVID vaccine in the last 2 months, right? The problem is 75% of the population got a COVID vaccine in the last 2 months. And so yes, you get vitiligo and yes, you had a vaccine, but showing that the vaccine caused the vitiligo is very difficult. One thing and this is what I said to my patient today, I did not see a huge uptick in people getting vitiligo during the pandemic. So, if the vaccine was causing vitiligo at a higher rate than usual, I should have seen lots and lots and lots of extra vitiligo. And I did not see that. So I think that there's probably a chance that there wasn't a strong correlation. We don't know for sure. I actually published a paper reporting a case of vitiligo that we were pretty sure was from the vaccine after just saying that. But the reason why was because they got vitiligo at the site of injection of the vaccine. It was like the vitiligo started right where the vaccine was injected. That was the only case I've heard of, and we thought that was relatively convincing.
And that brings us back to why we want to do this, why we have done this study, right? Because we have said many things, right, that we really don't know if those are the ones. Is there any infection, or there are particular infections? So Todd found a company that might be able to tell us which virus has infected you from your blood sample. So it might not be that any cause of inflammation leads to vitiligo, but only specific viral infections do.
That's actually cool.
So yeah,
Glad you brought that up.
Yeah, so that's a unique feature that from your blood samples and our ability, hopefully, in your reporting of having an infection, we might be able to not just say, hey, any infection, but this particular viral infection is the one. So it could be that because the vaccine also induces inflammation, and any inflammatory scenario might lead to vitiligo, but that might not be the case, right?
Mm-hmm.
It might be only certain type of viral infection. And that's what we hopefully will be able to tell at the end of this study.
Yeah, Todd found a company that looks at antibodies in the blood. And you make antibodies to fight viruses, and you can actually look at the type of antibody you made and know what virus it was fighting. So that those of you sending us your blood, which is most of you, thank you. But that's an extra thing that we weren't planning on that we can look at now and correlate with your temperature. You get a temperature bump and then an antibody change in your blood, and it's a ton of data.
So that's what all this data together will allow us to answer the specific questions that you guys are asking. Yes.
So I'm jumping out of order, but it just came in and it's about this topic, so I'm going to go with it. And that is, speaking of COVID, could RNA be a part of emerging treatments for vitiligo?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So yes. I say we, but we all at UMass, we all feel like we won 2 Nobel Prizes with Craig and Victor. They're friends of ours. It's a very small institution. We're very excited that Victor Ambros won the Nobel Prize this year for microRNAs, and Craig Mello won, in a number of years ago for discovering siRNA. And we are indeed harnessing that discovery to make treatments for vitiligo. We're testing it. We've published a few papers showing that we can deliver RNA or siRNA into the skin to turn genes off. Those are the genes that cause vitiligo. If we turn them off, then vitiligo can't run. And they're actually working pretty effectively in the tests that we've done. We've done it in mice and shown that we can turn off their vitiligo. We've done it in human skin, not on people yet, but skin discarded from surgery, and shown that it works there to turn off the genes causing vitiligo. And we've done it in live pigs, showing that turns off the genes that cause vitiligo as well. So we're actually designing a study to go into humans hopefully this year. So yes, the answer is yes, and it's very exciting. And no place better to do that than here at UMass Chan.
Great. Well, so moving back to the hair cortisol studies. Hello, I do use hair color. Will that affect the hair study that I would send? So does hair
No,
dye affect cortisol?
it doesn't. And people have published that already, and we've looked as well. And it's okay if you dye your hair. It doesn't affect the cortisol level or the ability to get it out.
Great. Going to the genotyping, will we receive a copy of the genetic data in comparison with our other family members and any correlation?
Oh, well, this was our original plan. It's again, the institutional review board has the rules and we cannot share any private data with our participants. So again, the data sharing to the participants is something that we're working on. No study has released that, so that's one thing we're working on. I mean, my personal preference would be to share all the data with the participants, but yes, so there are standard protocols that guide all human studies, and one of them is any shared data that might reveal an unknown condition or an unknown relationship or anything should not be shared for the patients because it has these unintended consequences. So we are abiding by those.
The other thing too is anything that we suspect in your genes that are cause vitiligo. That's what we're studying here, and you might want to know that data. But actually, we still don't. This is just a hypothesis. We don't know what the relationship is. So we could, if we reported something to you, and you're like, and it made you conclude that you were going to get vitiligo someday, and we were wrong, then we wouldn't want to use that.
But as we said with the cortisol, there are measurements that we make with this, like what we call a polygenic risk score that might be more, but that be amenable to release. So as we explore the cortisol, we can explore other ways to.
Anything we find out that we are allowed to.
Then we will release. Yes, we would hope to release.
So related again to hair dye use, how do you differentiate hair dye as a cause of vitiligo rather than coincidence that because I'm using hair dye and I got vitiligo anyway?
Right. So the best cases are those who used a hair dye, had a huge reaction to that hair dye, and then got vitiligo within a few weeks afterward in the exact location that the hair dye was used. There are some cases of that where a man actually combed in a hair dye into his goatee, had a reaction, and then got vitiligo just in the shape of his goatee. A few weeks later. And we actually know that there are certain chemicals that cause vitiligo. And interestingly, one was discovered in the 1930s in a factory. Like half of the factory workers got vitiligo. And so a dermatologist went in and analyzed it and discovered they were all wearing these same gloves. And there was a chemical in the gloves that they were reacting to. And so he put that chemical on a little pad and put it on the skin, and they got vitiligo underneath where the pad was applied. So showing that pure chemical is what caused vitiligo. If there is any chemists online, that the chemicals that cause vitiligo are all phenols. So they've got a benzene ring and a hydroxyl group connected to them. So they've got this characteristic chemical structure. And so in the hair dyes, we know that there are a number of phenols. And so it all just kind of fits together and correlates well. But there are also ways to do, large studies, epidemiologic studies that look at the time of exposure and the time of developing vitiligo. And if you can sort through that, then you can determine that one was causing the other. And of course, this study, we're going to have so much data from you, and we're collecting people who don't have vitiligo yet, and we're finding out if you use hair dye, if you do get vitiligo at some point, then we will, make that connection and then dig in deeper and see if we find the markers.
And I will repeat the same thing, right? Because if you reported that you use a hair dye and you before hadn't, and those markers that we measure in your skin are elevated, then that is a more causal relationship between your use of the hair dye and the systemic effect of that hair dye in your skin.
But this is important because a lot of people think that correlation is causation, and they say, oh, if more people with vitiligo use hair dyes than don't, then that must mean the hair dyes cause it. It's not, right? Because if you have vitiligo, you have white hair and you might be dyeing that intentionally. So science is hard, but we know how to do it. That's the good news. And we're going to use your data and make some new discoveries.
Yeah. continuing on with genetic data, can you please tell me how genetic data is protected in the long run? Also, will we be told if we have a higher risk based on our genetics?
Yes, so that's this polygenic risk score. So I'll answer the second first. That's the polygenic risk score. I think this should be releasable, but we will work with our IRB to see if we can inform you of that. That's a score that was developed by our colleagues that are part of the study, our genetic part of the study. So we were just, before I came here, that's what we were discussing. We are computing now from the genotype, the genetic risk scores for everyone who submitted a blood sample. So that's, speak to.
Can't wait to see that.
So that's what we're doing right now. So your second answer was, how do we store your genetic information? So right now, the company who genotyped you provide us through a secure channel the files that contain the data, which we store in our servers that are CLIA protected, not CLIA, but they are, I forgot the exact nomenclature, but they are as protected as any data that is private is. It's as protected as your clinical data, as your clinical data and protected. We never move the data from there anywhere else. So that's where it stays. We only then use data that is derived from there, that we derive it at the same place where your data is. So your data doesn't move from where it is stored right now. So that's our policy, to store your genotype and any other data that you provide us. The same will be with your wearable data. Anything that we download from Fitbit will be stored in the same place.
And as soon as we can, we de-identify it, meaning that, if someone happened across this data, it would not be connected to your name. There's a key, right?
That is done already. Yeah, because thank you.
There's a key that does connect it to your name, because we need to know who you are, right? Ultimately, but that's under lock and key and only available to a very small number of researchers who have to have that information.
Yeah, that's correct, right? Because all your identifiable data, your name, your phone number, is only stored in one place, which is that server that supports your phone app. We don't store anything of that anywhere else. So all these other data is associated with your VIGOR ID. So you probably have seen your VIGOR ID. So that's the only thing we know from you when we do analysis, just your VIGOR ID, and the relationships with the other VIGOR IDs. We really don't know your name or anything else when we do any analysis.
All of that important identifiable information, we call it, is stored separately from the DNA and your genetic information. So that's an extra level of safety, that if someone was able to get access to one, they wouldn't have the other, and so they wouldn't be able to put the two together.
Yes.
Great. So the next question is about the wearables, and I think actually I can answer this one. So if I already have a Fitbit account, can I use my existing one, or do I need to create a new one to share data with you? The answer is you can use your existing Fitbit. In fact, you can use your existing device. We're going to send you our new Fitbit, and we would prefer that you swap out the Fitbit you've been using for the new one that we're going to give you, but with the same Fitbit account. That way, just all of the data is the same. We're sure about that because of the sensors in the watch that you presently have versus the one that we're going to send you. They could have been different or updated. So for consistency's sake, we would prefer to have you use the new one that we send you, but you can use your same account. And if you really are very, very attached to your present Fitbit, we can even let you use that. But hopefully
you can wear both and compare them and let them fight it out.
The advantage of this one is it does measure your skin temperature, which we really, really, really believe it's a game changer. But again, we are happy if you wear yours and share that data and not the skin temperature. It's perfect.
Right. And regardless, you can keep your same Fitbit account. You don't have to get a new one. So we're down to the last 6 minutes. We have a few questions. Maybe we'll do a bit of a lightning round here.
All right.
We'll try to do some quick answers. And I think most of these questions are fairly amenable to that. So what if my spots are shrinking? Do you want to know that?
Yes. That means you're getting better, and you're not. It's the opposite of a flare. We do want to know that.
Yeah, please.
A non-pigmented spot from a burn is that considered a vitiligo spot for someone who does not otherwise have vitiligo?
No, most burns can cause scars that are not pigmented, and you get a white scar that lacks pigment. That is not necessarily vitiligo. Those who have vitiligo and get a burn, the vitiligo can go to that location though and cause true vitiligo there.
Yep. Are you monitoring diet in flares? What about alcohol in flares?
No,
Maybe we should.
Maybe we should, but we're not, because yeah, it is, we discussed it. It's not easy to standardize and compare your reported alcohol consumption to somebody else's. So we decided not to. We would love to do it if we had a good way to measure it in a standardized way.
Yeah, and we know lots of things have been, by doing this for a long time, we've put pieces together and said, oh, hair dyes cause vitiligo, and then we have not heard that about alcohol or dietary changes yet. So there are so many different alcohol consumption correlations and dietary changes you could do and report. It would be hard to tie them together, but we'll think about that.
And so a very related question, what about gluten or vitamin deficiencies in vitiligo?
Right. No. So I answer this question a lot in my clinic. Having gluten sensitivity, which is celiac disease, is more common if you have vitiligo, and it's more common in your family members. So having a sensitivity to gluten is more likely if you have vitiligo than if you don't. If you have a gluten sensitivity, then you need to avoid gluten. But that does not affect your vitiligo in any way. So eating gluten or not eating gluten, even if you have a gluten sensitivity, doesn't change your vitiligo. And if you don't have a gluten sensitivity, then gluten doesn't affect your vitiligo either. And the vitamins, vitamin D, most of us are vitamin D deficient. Most of us don't get enough sunlight to give us vitamin D, and a lot of us supplement with that. But there's been no correlation with how whether it affects vitiligo. So taking supplementation doesn't help your vitiligo.
Great. And our last question, one just came in, so we'll see if we can get to that, but we'll see how we're doing. We're down to our last 4 minutes. So can vitiligo form around joints, mouth, nose, ears, or is it just middle of the stomach and arms?
Oh, anywhere. It can be anywhere. And it actually likes the joints and the mouth openings to the body. It really happens to like. So even your belly button and eyes and nose and mouth and genitals, and it's for some reason that those are common areas, but it can affect any part of the body.
Okay. And so we do have time for this. This will be our last question, and it's back again to diet related things. Is there any correlation between the microbiome, specifically in the gut, in vitiligo?
Well,
so if I'm going to, because there is not yet. This is one thing we have thought about adding into the study. There is an opportunity to get funding for that. So what we might do is send a survey to see how many folks might be willing to send us samples to be able to measure measure what your microbiome and see how it changes over time and how that correlates with, again, markers or vitiligo onset. Yes.
So samples are not super easy to get.
Yeah, these are more complicated samples to get. We do have a colleague. She has told me many times that she would love to collaborate with us. She would do the analysis. She will process the samples from the study. But John and I have been shy because, as opposed to the samples, the devices we're sending it. Microbiome sample collection in pieces, feces collections, which is much more involved. So we have not added that to the study.
But it's not hard.
It's not hard.
It's just you have to be committed, and we can do it.
And the hypothesis is yes. The hypothesis is yes. There is probably a correlation. It's likely that there is a correlation, and it will be very, very beneficial to identify this correlation. Yes.
And it's not just feces, but also skin swabs, right? So we would probably, if we do it, we would want to do both, where you swab your skin and we'd collect the feces sample and look to see at the microbiome at both locations.
And you can see how scientists argue, because yes, so John has a hypothesis, mostly the skin, and I think will be the gut microbiome, but that's how science works.
And there's a little bit of data that the gut microbiome in a mouse model of vitiligo does matter. And we even have some data actually that in a roundabout way that changing the gut in some big ways affects the vitiligo in mice. There's even some human studies that show that the response to melanoma therapy is different if you have different gut microbiome, which is similar to vitiligo. So there's a lot of support telling us that this is probably an avenue that would give us answers.
So probably I will take your question and we'll probably send a survey to the community to see what's the willingness to collect this type of samples that are will take more time.
So whoever asked that question, say yes.
Well, that was great timing. We're at 8 o'clock on the nose, so we'll wrap things up here. That was a phenomenal question and answer session. So thank you to all of you participants.
Thank you.
Thanks also to John and Manuel for your thoughtful answers. Again, if you have any other questions about anything we covered tonight or other aspects of the study, use this email on your screen right here, and one of the team members will reach out to you. We will be publishing the recording of this webinar so that you can rewatch it or share with family members. So be on the lookout for an email with the link to do that. And again, thank you for your participation in this study. We truly could not do this without you. And we look forward to getting together over Zoom again in a few months to give you some more updates. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you and good night.